Welcome everyone to the live session. Today we are talking about why and how our 3-year-old learned to read. Thank you for joining us. Please let us know where you are joining us from. And thank you for your patience with this session. It promises to be very exciting, very transformative, and you're going to benefit a lot. So please make sure you stay till the end. My name is Nkem Sinachiago, and I'm the founder of the Montessori Home Education Academy. We run the Montessori Home Education program, which spans about 12 months. And for 2025, we're going to have another session. So stay tuned because this weekend we exceeded 100 subscribers on YouTube. So we're going to be running a flash sale. You'll get the details at the end of the session. So we're going to dive right in. Why did our 3-year-old learn to read? I don't know if you heard before, but what I was basically saying is that someone might wonder, why are children not playing? Why are they learning to read at 3? You will find out more, but know that Montessori is all about play, and play is the work of the child, according to the Montessori quote, the quote by Dr. Maria Montessori herself. And that is what we are all about at the Academy. So during the course of the live session, I'm going to be sharing with you 5 reasons why our daughter learned how to read and how she also learned how to read, because you could pick some things from there. And lastly, we're going to be looking at critical success factors, as I put it, things that will help to sustain that reading habit when they do pick it up. But before we go far, I would like us to share, how did you learn how to read? That was a question, for example, that I got during my training program, and it actually made me to think, how did I learn how to read? Can I even remember? And it brings us to the point that even though we can read, it doesn't mean we automatically know how to teach our children to read. So it's something that should be learned, and when we learn it the right way, we can also implement it the right way to the benefit of our children. So one of the things I had shared as a response to that question when I got it during my training was, okay, I remember reading some passages in class, but then it already meant I was already reading. But then we'll read some passages and you use your finger and be pointing at the words, trying to get the word that the teacher is saying or the one that is you're trying to say at that point in time. But the whole, the mechanics of it, the process that led up to that is not something I could easily remember. But if you remember, I would like you to share, how did you learn how to read? And if your children are already reading, how did they learn how to read? Please share with us in the comments and in the chat section. We would like to see that. Okay, while we wait for that, another thing we want to share is, why are we here? Why do you want your children to learn how to read, assuming they don't know how to read yet? What is your motivation? My favorite parenting coach, Wendy Ologe, will say, he that knows why is greater than he who knows how. And the truth is that there are a lot of things we know how to do, but we don't do them. It's either we don't do them because we don't know why we should do them, or we know why we shouldn't do them. Now, I'll explain a little more. So for doing things, let's say things that are good, if we know good things and we do not do them, even though we know how to do them, one of the reasons is probably because we don't see why we should do them. That something is good doesn't mean automatically you're going to go about doing it, right? So, but when you know why you should do a certain thing, maybe helping people or being charitable or telling the truth, some of those, core values that some of us have, if you know why you should do it, then you probably go about doing it, right? Or even if it's some activity, if you know how to exercise, right? It doesn't mean you're going to be exercising every day. Sometimes you just go and it's like, some of us exercise by watching certain things that are bad. We might know how to do them. Knowing why is very key. So I'd like to see at least one comment saying, this is why, I want my child to learn how to read, or this is why my child to read. I'll just give us a second for that while I check, making sure I'm not missing any of the comments. Can you hear me clearly? Please still confirm. Make sure you can hear and see me. Welcome to those that are just joining. Share where you are joining from, and also share why you are here. Do you want your children to learn how to read? Because we discussed how knowing why is very important, and even more important than knowing how, because when you know why, then you can make use of your how, right? So share why you want your children to learn how to read. And if you remember how you yourself learned how to read, please put it in the chat. That will be very interesting to see. So without taking much time, we're going to dive into why our 3-year-old learned how to read. I about 5 points. Of course, there are more, but we're just trying to focus on the key ones. Now, one of the main things was observation. So from journaling, I like to share. We have this Montessori Home Education Program journal, which has some notes at the beginning, some guiding tips on what to really look out for, in the child, and then it has some prompts per day of what to check for their sensitive periods, to take note of what you are seeing in your child. Because the truth is, sometimes we have our children doing certain things and we keep it in mind that, oh, they did this today, maybe they should start doing certain things, or we can enroll them in this program, and we don't write it down. Tomorrow they do something new. If you children, every day there's a new change you're seeing, depending on their age. Sometimes the changes are even like between before and after nap, you will see a change in your child, right? So if you don't document some of these things, it's hard to keep track and know when something has changed. So for our daughter, by observation, documentation, we notice she's interest in reading, both reading actual books, trying to read, pretending to read, whichever form, and just sometimes she'll look at some words and she'll just pretend and say something, like as if maybe if she just says it, maybe that would be the reading taking place, right? So that interest was definitely showing. Although I had felt that, okay, there was still some time, there was no rush to start trying to teach her everything. And it was not too long after I had completed my Montessori training for 3 to 6 year olds, which has the reading curriculum. So I felt there was still time and I was going to follow the whole due process, the way it is done in the classroom. But later on, you're going to find out that that was not what eventually happened. Typically in the Montessori classroom, you have the letter sounds, you have the sound boxes, very fancy and very beautiful procedure and materials to use. So that was my plan. But it, of course, it was going to take a number of resources, a number of quite some time to be able to go through all that. Meanwhile, I had a child who was already beginning to show, I want to learn how to read, like just begin to show that interest so strongly, right? Increasing per day. She's 4 now, but this was at the age of 3, 3.5, thereabouts, that interest began to show. So that was one of the reasons why the whole reading thing started coming up, learning how to read. Now the second reason was sensitive periods. If you're familiar with sensitive periods, of course, if you're part of our Montessori medication program, that would not be new to you, and if you're part of our community as well. But if you check out our Medium blog, you would see, and even our website, you can access the article that we have on sensitive periods. But it basically shows that reading and writing, the interest in reading and writing, starts at about 3 to 5 years. So, but that of writing stops earlier than that of reading. So, writing is like 3 to 4 years, reading is 3 to 5 years. So, at 3 years, basically, it's quite typical that they'll start showing that interest, especially if they've already been exposed to books, they've been exposed, like being read to, and so on. That interest would most likely show up. So, because I knew that writing typically the sensitive period ends quicker, right? My focus was more on, okay, let's focus on writing skills, fine motor skills, not actually writing a word per se, but the pre-writing skills, as they call it, things that the child does, and it helps them to learn to build their fine motor skills, to build their writing muscles and all that. So the sensitive period was there. So that was also part of the reason why the whole idea of reading started coming up, writing started coming up. And one thing my Montessori teacher would say then in the program is that, yes, sensitive period, of course, is good, but you want to make sure that you're also following the child, the interest of the child that you are looking at. So parenting and educating the child that you have, and not the child that you want to have, or not your neighbor's child, not your child's friend, right? You work with who you have and who you are seeing. And the reason is this: sometimes, even though we have sensitive periods that it's spanning like 2, 3 years, or even 2 years, and you have that there's a certain age where this should start up, and maybe your child is showing an interest earlier. Sometimes the reason why they are able to get interested in something earlier might be because having that one-on-one attention, right? They're able to pick it faster and they are ready to move to the next skill. So if they've already learned some of the basics for reading, some of the basics for writing, and then they're ready to start reading. You won't say, "Oh, but it's too soon," right? You need to be prepared as the parent. So it takes us back to the last session we had about the prepared adult and the prepared environment. You need to know some of the basic things for teaching your child, for educating your child at home, regardless of where they are attending school. Because when you know these skills, you can support them. You can even discuss with your child's teacher. You can do a lot of simple activities at home to help them, right? So that's why it's very important. Pay attention to their sensitive periods, but at the same time, look at what they are doing, look at what they are showing you, make observations of their activities. So observation, sensitive periods, those were two reasons already why she started getting into learning how to read. And then the third reason is a direct request. She at one point she was holding a book, she was looking at it, she couldn't read it, and said, "I want to learn how to read. Can you teach me?" And one of the things we say in the academy is that when a child comes to you and says, "Can you teach me this?" That is like the prime time to, it's like the soil is fertile to for you to sow all the seeds that you want to sow, because they have asked you directly. It means they are primed to learn, and you don't want to waste time or take too long between that request and actually taking action, because that interest means they are ready to learn. It's also like sensitive periods. During a sensitive period for reading and writing, it means it's the easiest time for them to pick it. It does not mean they cannot learn it any other time. However, it's going to be harder. It's going to take a longer time and more effort, right? So we got that direct request from her. Please teach me how to read. I want to learn how to read. And I remember then when she had asked me, it was in the she was sitting in the car holding a book, and it really touched me. I said, I need to fast track whatever it is that I'm doing with my whole approach. So we even, we discussed it as a family. I said, see, somebody is saying she wants to read, she needs to learn how to read, right? You have to share. Let's start coming up with different methods. Everybody had to chip in. Okay, we'll do this one in the morning, we'll do this in the evening, and all that, right? So it was a very interesting moment and turning point moment. So that direct request was there. And now the fourth one was learning style. So with the learning style, um, you would want to know the learning style of your children, because when you know their learning styles, you will know how best to approach it. Another one of the if you're familiar with learning styles, you know that there's visual learners, there are kinesthetic learners, and there are audio learners. So our daughter is we consider her a visual learner, and visual learners typically they like text and they like pictures. So that means when you so with pictures and text, it means that someone who is a visual learner will be more interested, more likely to show more interest in reading than someone who is not a visual learner, right? So it doesn't mean that's why sometimes if you start trying to compare, oh, this child showed interest earlier or this child didn't show interest earlier, it's not going to be very helpful, right? That's not the best way to go about it, because every child is different and they have their own unique talents. So because she is a visual learner, that's also one of the reasons why that interest definitely would easily come up earlier. Being interested in pictures and being interested in the words in the book and trying to read them. So that interest will drive the motivation to learn when you start teaching the skills that are needed. Now, if you do have an auditory learner, it doesn't mean they cannot start learning how to read, but some of the basic things they can pick the letter sounds. They're not left behind, because another example with our other daughter, earlier on when she started talking, I was showing her some letter cards, right? Oh, maybe this letter makes this sound. I think it was so this is the sandpaper letter. So this one is the N letter N that makes the N sound, right? We have letter C that makes the K sound. So I think it was letter C I had shown her. I showed her a number of times, showed her a couple of other letters, but I wasn't seeing so much of that interest. So I didn't exactly push it that much, right? And then several months down the line, because she's just above 2 now, several months down the line, she just, because I'd even taken the material away, I didn't bother showing her after a while when I didn't see that interest. So she stumbled on the letter card for letter C, and she just picked it, ran to me, and made the sound. She said, "K." I was so shocked and surprised. I said, what? Like, I showed you this several months ago. You were not even interested. In my mind, of course, this was not a conversation with her. You were not even interested. And then just for you to come and recall the full thing, the sound that the letter makes. And I was now wondering, why didn't I complete the whole alphabet with her? So my point is, children have an absorbent mind. They are learning even when you think they are not learning. So she now, our second daughter is more of I'll consider her an auditory learner, right? Loves music, loves to sing. Of course, they both love music, but there's a difference, when you see an auditory learner and how they tend to comprehend things. You see that interest in sometimes singing everything, right? Whether this it's not about how good the singing is or not, but just that being able to pick on tunes, pick on melodies, right? So the auditory learner, you want to make sure that you're presenting things in a sing-song format. You want to make sure that you're talking a lot, talking like saying things out, because sometimes in some typical Montessori activities, you might not say so much, right? It's more about showing the child. But of course, in teaching how to read, you want to be saying some words. But knowing that your child is an auditory learner, for example, compared to a visual learner, you want to be more verbal, more audio, so to speak, while you're also showing them certain things. And then for kinesthetic learners, they can be guided to focus more on letter recognition, because kinesthetic learners, they love to move, 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 right? You want to make it as tangible as possible. You could use physical letters, something that they can touch. Of course, all children will benefit from having the physical letters that they can touch, right? But being able to, I was just going to show some magnetic letters, but they are not close by. So I'll give us a different example. But being able to hold the letters physically in their hand, maybe even be able to throw the letters as long as they won't break anything, is a very good option for a kinesthetic learner that loves to move. Now, in the process of preparing this for this session, I was inspired by our 2-year-old to create what I would call, what will I call this now? Play-Doh letters, or modeling clay letters. I'll show us in just a minute. So, can you see, depending on the camera? So this is letter A, this is B, this is C. So this is made with modeling clay. So one of our daughters was just playing with the modeling clay and it formed the letter C, and it just suddenly clicked like, oh, look, this is even, imagine the child physically holding the letter, C, and you're saying it makes this sound. Children that love to play with Play-Doh, this will be very attractive to them. Of course, I'm a fan of using similar colors if you're trying to teach letters when they are not colors, but this is just what was available at the time, and we just showed that. But imagine if the child can form the letters using modeling clay. Like, that's, to me, that's very cool. And it's probably going to stick more or stick better. So we have E here, F here. Sorry, F on this side, right? So depending on the kind of learner that you have, that would be very helpful for you to now follow the approach. Of course, all the methods, being able to, any child will benefit from having Play-Doh letters. Any child will benefit from moving while they're learning letters, and also hearing, seeing, touching, everything combined, like all, it's like multimedia, right? But you want to start from the point of their strength. So the visual learner, you will know where to approach them from. And one good example, if you're not familiar with learning styles, I'll just share, is when it comes to something like music. So in terms of music, your typical visual learner might be interested in reading the music, like seeing the lyrics. Maybe they're singing, there's a song playing, or they're singing somewhere, whether it's in the choir, on TV, or wherever. They might be interested in, oh, I want to see the words, I want to see the lyrics. I know I'm a very visual learner, and that's the first thing I search for, the lyrics. Sometimes you might check, you'll see a comment that puts the lyrics, and you're so grateful to that person for putting it. If you see the video and it has the lyrics, that's usually my own focus, for example, as a visual learner. So they're focusing on the pictures, focusing on the wordings. The auditory learner will be focusing on singing along, right? Before, in a short time, they've already learned the wordings. That's not really their concern. They're just singing along and enjoying it, right? And then the kinesthetic learner is not interested in what the audio or the visual learner is even doing. They just want to dance, dance, make the music, beat drums, and all those kind of things. Of course, it is not absolute, but having an idea of some of these things, these preferences, again, by observing our children, will let us know where we want to even approach the whole concept of reading and writing from. So the learning style, her learning style was one of the reasons I believe our daughter got interested in reading earlier, and we tried to support her with that. So feel free, if you do have any questions, let us know. If you know your child's learning style, share it in the comment section and let us know what it is that you saw or that you're still seeing, that helps you to know that this is your child's learning style. I think it will also help someone as well. Now, the fourth thing that we've put together as a reason why our daughter learned to read or got interested in reading is her temperament. So, taking note of her temperament, I would say choleric, melancholic combination somewhat. And you will know that for cholerics, there's this drive to get things done quicker, just straight to the point. And then the melancholic also wants that perfection, like getting it done well. So you want to get it done, you want to get it done well. So one of the things I noticed with her was that drive. I want to learn how to read now. Like, when I was trying to say, okay, we're going to learn the letter sounds first, A to Z, and we're going to do, it was like all her she wanted to know was, I want to be able to read one word. That was just what I could see. So we had to re-strategize, and and say, okay, how can we make this faster? Now, the goal is not, again, if you're teaching an entire classroom, you can't just go fast tracking it in certain ways. You may have some group presentations, you might have individual presentations, but you would want to follow the typical process, because even for the purpose of reporting, right, you have to follow certain things. That's why there's a difference between teaching at home and teaching in school, right? Certain things have to be followed, right? Whereas at home, you have that flexibility. Regardless of what is happening in school, you can, of course, work in alignment, but you also have the option to tweak things a bit to suit the child that you have. So from that temperament, I would say our goal was, now how can we get her to read one word in the fastest or shortest possible way. So with the choleric temperament, that's the goal. Get there as soon as possible. With the melancholic side, of course, there's the strive for perfection, the concern with mistakes. So you also want to be cautious when you're making corrections. Let's say maybe this letter makes this sound. You don't, let's say this letter makes this sound, and then they say it in a different way. You don't want to start saying, no, that's not correct. Of course, it's not correct, but the focus is not on that immediate correction, right? Because if you discourage the child too quickly or too soon, they are going to lose interest, or they are going to feel like it's so hard and difficult to get there. So you want to be very patient and know the right time and the right way to do corrections. We have one of the key Montessori principles we review in the academy, in the Montessori home education program, is the control of error, right? And how to achieve that, to make sure that we're not just going about correcting them all the time. They are able to correct themselves. Of course, that's one of the best things. If your child can correct themselves, if you as an adult can correct yourself, of course, it makes you happier and more confident. You don't need someone to tell you if something doesn't fit the right way, because you can see immediately that it doesn't fit. So with that temperament, you knowing your child's temperament, you'll be kind of tactful in how you go about teaching them and even making corrections when it's applicable. If you have a phlegmatic child, a predominantly phlegmatic, they might not show too much, as much interest or as much drive, and be more interested in playing. But it does not mean they cannot learn how to read. You just have to follow the approach that they are showing you, the method that is going to work for that temperament, right? The sanguine child as well, playful, or I mean, children generally are playful, but of course, some may have that more affinity for play, right? It does not mean they will not learn how to read, or you cannot teach them how to read. You just need to work from that point of strength, right, to get them on board for what is needed. So one of the things you want to do for the sanguine and phlegmatic child is showing them why it is important to read. And one of the ways you can show this is by reading stories that are of interest to them. Because when they see that you're reading a book, they're looking at the book and pointing at the words, it's going to help them see that, okay, I can look at a book, I can read out the words, I can tell myself these stories that I normally enjoy, instead of waiting maybe all the time for an adult to read it to me. So that was how temperament sort of impacted our children. I'd like us to just pause a bit and share, what is your child's temperament? Do you know your child's temperament? Do you know your child's learning style? Let us confirm that we are all still connected and can hear me. It's very important to make sure our audio and our video is still very stable. Thank you for those who are joining us live. And if you're watching the replay, still feel free to put it in the comments when you do catch up with the replay. So we had just looked at why our daughter learned to read. And if you're just joining us, this is Nkemagu from the Montessori Home Education Academy. If you're here live, make sure you invite someone to join us. We're about to go into the how of reading and how she learned how to read. So I think it was at the point of even teaching her, working with her, even as a family, some of the methods were not so clear and so straightforward, because like I said, I had the Montessori training and the approach to follow, but with the somewhat I won't call it urgency, but with the eagerness to learn, we had to change things a bit and tweak things around to get like a blend of a method, which I'm about to share. So just make sure you are still connected, and you also stay to the end of the video to get the bonus that we have for celebrating our 100 YouTube subscribers, over 100 YouTube subscribers. Thank you very much, all of you that are here with us on this journey. So we're going to go into the how. As like I said, at the time of teaching, it wasn't so clear, how the whole process written down, but we eventually documented it, and this became clearer. one of my concerns then was I didn't want that interest to drop, right? When they are showing you that motivation, they need to learn, they want to learn, you want to tap into that energy, right? Because they are likely to pick it better. So ultimately, I started searching, okay, how to teach the child to read Montessori way, but I already had that familiarity with the Montessori way. But what else? How else could you combine? What can you do? And I think that was how I stumbled on this page at Toddlers Can Read on Instagram, and he also teaches reading both for I think different ages. And I saw some when I saw I think the free webinar that he had, there were some things that he shared, and I said, okay, this is sounding quite like the Montessori method, but there were some other things I would say that were additional that I felt like okay, this would help us get to a certain destination quicker and then come back to now follow the due process, because our goal was now to read one word as soon as possible, not to go into the full reading. So ultimately we did a blend of the Montessori method using the manuals we have from the North American Montessori Center where I did my training, and then the Toddlers Can Read tips and options that they share on their page. So if you're again familiar with the 3 period lesson, I just have to, there's no other way to really go around some of these things. These are concepts that we learn with parents in the program. And if you follow my channel, I'm sure you would have picked up some of these things. But if not, the link to the videos will be shared so you can watch it after this session. But if you're familiar with the 3 period lesson, it's usually how we introduce new vocabulary to kids in the Montessori environment, and it basically comprises three steps, right? So first you tell them the name of a thing. So let's say I can say I'm trying to introduce vocabulary for okay, I have a funny thing here. What do I call this? Teeth, pen, and this is letter E, or Play-Doh. So if you want to teach the child the name of these three items, you would typically use a 3 period lesson, because what happens is that in the first step, or in the first period as it is called, you want to say you say the name of the thing. So this is a teeth, dentition. This is letter E that says eh, and this is a pen, right? Each time you say this is this, the child will repeat the name that you just said after you to confirm that they heard you, right? So that's the first step. This is. And then the second step, you will now say, show me, maybe show me a pen. And then the child will now point at the pen that you showed them, right? That you told them that was the name. But if they don't point at it, then it means, okay, they didn't hear you clearly. Maybe you need to repeat that process of this is a pen, this is a Play-Doh, and this is a dentition, right? So it's good because you're getting feedback as you are teaching. It's not like when you finish the whole process, then you start asking questions and they are looking at you and you're getting frustrated, they are getting frustrated, right? So that's one good thing about the 3 period lesson. So that's the second step. You say, show me. And then the last step will now be, what is this? So I can now lift this up and say, what is this? They will now say, it is a pen, right? If they are talking well. If they cannot say it, maybe it's a long word or a difficult word, you might now realize that okay, they didn't hear you clearly, or they've not registered that word, so you need to repeat it. Okay, this is a pen, right? If it's not going well, or if looking like it's taking too long, or there's a little bit of frustration trying to creep in, that is a good time to end the lesson and try again. You don't want to um, tamper with your child's love of learning. Like we know that is very key, more important than even what you're teaching them, is that curiosity to learn. So if there's any frustration trying to creep in, just know, okay, let's try this again next time, tomorrow, anytime, whatever it is, you can just wrap it up and try again. So ultimately, when I came up with blending these two methods, the Montessori method and the Toddlers Can Read method, I would say we now ended up with a 3-step reading method using the 3 period lesson. And I'm going to break it down for us. So stay tuned and make sure you can hear me. Any concerns, please put it in the chat if you cannot see me or hear me. Okay, so we go right ahead. So now the first step is learning the letter sounds and tracing. So one of the things you want to do is pick 3 letters. Again, the 3 period lesson, you will typically use 3 objects, 3 letters, 3 whatever of it is you want to teach, just so that they have that option to compare and it's not just one thing they are learning at a time. So pick 3 letters that can form a word, like mat, for example, M, A, and T, letter M, A, and T, which is the sound A, and T. So when you pick those three letters, remember the goal that we were trying to achieve with our daughter was to get her to read one word at least before we now start learning all the other letters. So if you pick three letters, you can now start teaching it using the 3 period lesson. Say, okay, this is this sound. Let me see if I can get the letter sound. So you can, again, this is one of our some of our letter cards, right? So you pick the letter card for M and A and T, and then you begin to show them, right? So the first period you say this is you're not going to say this is M. You're trying to say this is but if your child is already familiar with the letter names, there's no problem. What you would now say is this is letter M, and it makes the sound. It's just the same way. I think I saw this example about how you can compare it to animals. Okay, the cow makes the moo sound and so on. So this letter makes that sound. So you can. This is letter A. You can even allow them to trace it. So trace it, looking at this letter, for example, they can trace it on salt. If you have a plate, pour some salt in it, they can trace it, or they can trace on sand, whatever it is. But the act of writing and tracing, the process of learning the letter sounds, is very helpful because then they are also committing it to memory. We know that when we write, it helps us to recall things even better. So you can also bring out some objects and say, look, all these objects start with the so maybe you have a toy monkey, or you have a mat. You can say, look, listen, this starts with sound, mat, monkey. You emphasize the beginning letter sound. And then you go to the second one, this is A, and then you show some examples. Look, apple starts with A sound. Ant starts with A sound. If you don't have objects, you can use pictures as well. And then lastly, you teach the T sound, which is T. In the Montessori curriculum, just wanted to clarify this. Typically, there's a pattern or a format for introducing letters. We don't necessarily follow A, B, C, D, E, but more M is one of the earlier ones that will be introduced, right? Depending on how easy it is for children to pronounce certain letters, those are the ones that typically come first, and some other factors that are considered. So, but what we're learning here right now is just, for example, trying to get to the point of reading one word. So we chose M, A, and T. So learning the sounds, tracing it, that is all in the first step. This is sound, this is A sound, and you do all that. Then you will now go to the second step. The second step is where you will now say, show me the letter that makes this sound. So if you ask for show me the letter that makes the T sound, of course you would now hope that they can show you. I'm trying to construct a T sound from this Play-Doh here. Let us show you what I'm doing. Let's say this was among the ones that you introduced, and you can say, show me T, and then they can point at it. You can even say throw the letter T, and they might throw it. Especially the kinesthetic learners, they will enjoy doing that one very well, right? Or show me A sound, and they might pick this up, right? They can play with it. Show me sound, right? So when they show you all those sounds, if they're able to show you, then it means, okay, they heard you clearly, they are beginning to recognize these letters and the sounds that they make. Now the third step is where you will now go into what is this. So then you want to see if they can actually say out the sounds the way you have taught them, and you can now pick up the letter A and say, what is this? They might say ah, or they might say A. If they say A, then you know that, okay, they haven't yet got the point that, okay, we're talking about the sound, because the sound is what you need to read, not the letter name itself. So you can say, you can either say, would you like to try again? Or you can say, oh, this is a sound. You try the next one. What is this, right? This is T, letter T, but it makes T sound. So if they get it, that is also fine. It means they understand and they have gotten that part. If not, you can say, okay, this is T sound. And then the last one will be the M, letter M, saying Now, when you test all that, this is the third step already, testing that they can recall the letters. It means you're now going to say, okay, let us now try. Because in fact, at the beginning of this lesson, one thing you want to make sure you tell them is, look, we're going to learn how to read one word today. That is already an excitement to get them involved in the lesson. So the next thing you're going to do is to tell them, okay, let us try combining two letters. So What you can even do, I'm just going to write it down here. It's good they also see you writing. So you can just have something like this and you write ah and you ask them what is this sound? Since you're in the third step of what is, right? And they say ah, then you add the second letter and say what is this sound, right? They can say t. You can now say, can you try saying it together? They might say at, at. Can you say it faster? At, right? It doesn't come that easy. I will tell you for free. But when it does come, that's usually what it takes to click. So be patient with that, right? So they say try to say it faster. When you choose an easy word like this, and most times it's easier to get it than if you try to choose something more complex, or if you choose words that are not even consonant, vowel, and consonants. So if they get this at, then you can now add, okay, the last one, letter M that says, so let them read out, so they can say, now can you read it together? At. Try and read it faster. Mat, right? It might take a little while, but basically that's the point of getting to that stage of reading one word. Because once they are able to even blend, like even remotely blend it, something close to blending, you want to make sure you acknowledge it. You want to, hype them up very well, let them be excited about it because it is a big achievement to be able to blend. And once they can blend, usually everything begins to build up from there. So let share with me in the chats if you are following, if it makes sense to you, if you have already tried this and how it is working, let us know. But those are really the three main steps in terms of how she learned how to read and was able to read that first word. Because once she was able to read that first word, then we now went from two letters to three letters, and then I said, okay, now we need to do all the letter sounds so that you can read more words, right? And ultimately, with something like that, okay, sorry, someone is asking, hi, Dr. Joy, can you hear me? Or you have a question? Okay, I'll look out for that while it comes. So one of the things you want to, okay, that's great. You use blending and it helped your daughter. That is very great. And so like the approach we are using with picking three letters that form a word. So subsequently, once they learn, how to read one word, they get excited typically. And then you can begin to introduce other letters subsequently. You're looking for three letters that can always form a word. Like the next one you can choose can be like even with the one they have learned with maths, you can learn at, you can learn you can like learn ma, you can learn tam, right? And then you move to another three-letter word that has another three letters that can form a new word. But you want to make sure you're choosing the format of consonant, vowel, and consonant, not something like THE, because THE that's something that might count as a sight word, even though you can also learn to pronounce TH and then E, but that's a different session altogether. Right? So pick simple words and don't be in a hurry to jump into let them start reading books now and start testing very long words and getting frustrated. You don't want to. Your goal is to help them build that confidence with the reading skills and know that they can blend, know that they can recognize the letter sounds, and then gradually they will begin to pick up on all the other skills. So the next thing we'll be going into, which is the final aspect, is critical success factors for for sustaining this skill. So once they've now learned how to read, they've learned all the letter sounds, they started picking up on three-letter words and even generally phonetic words, even if they are beyond three letters, you find that if they've learned how to read the right way, they can see new words and even attempt to sound it out without saying they don't know that word. That's why that confidence is very key in reading and learning how to read, and as well as writing. So the first thing you want to do is once they have learned how to read, you want to use physical letters to practice a writing activity. Again, writing is something that helps to commit it to memory, right? The more they're able to write or attempt writing the letters, or even molding it like this, or with Play-Doh, this is E, right? These are all considered writing activities in the Montessori curriculum. Writing doesn't start with the actual writing, but things like tracing shapes, tracing circular shapes, linear shapes, triangles, because ultimately letters are made up of curves and lines, right? Curves and straight lines. So if your child is able to practice tracing maybe the lid of a container, or practice tracing something rectangular, they are still practicing for writing. If they are able to think of a sound, maybe you say, oh, let's play a game. Can you pick the letter that makes this sound? Maybe you have a box of 5 or 6 letters, and they can now check if we're using our Play-Doh letters as an example. Let me arrange some of them here. You can now say, can you write maybe the word cat, right? Using the letters, and they can pick even before they have the energy or the muscles they need for using their fingers to hold the pen and write. They can at least pick the right letter and say, okay, I'm trying to write k, act. And then they'll pick the k sound, they'll pick the a sound. Here's our a. This is a very funny a. They'll pick the a sound and then they'll pick the t sound, the t sound. And with that, I'll just put it on my hand to show you. If the child is able to do this, they have actually written a word, right? They didn't have to struggle with the pen to write that word. They just know that by being able to form those sounds, they're already performing a writing activity. So that's one of the things you want to focus on and start building once they've started learning this skill, so that they're learning it at the same time with reading. So that's the first, what I'll call critical success factor to sustain the reading skill and to help them to continue to build it. The second thing you want to look at is to begin to introduce letters and trees, each time choosing those that can form a word. So I think I shared that already. Like we started with the example of mat, right? Now you can choose cat, you can choose Sam, you know, but words you so there you're introducing B, O, and T and all that, right? You can go through a series of all those words, and before you know it, when they are playing around with the words and with the letter sounds, they're able to form multiple words and they're beginning to get the whole concept of decoding and encoding that comes with reading. The third critical thing you want to consider is confidence over correction. I mentioned it earlier. You want to make sure you're not just correcting. Be careful with no, not this, is that, right? You can focus on let's try again or let's do a different letter. Because sometimes some letters might be more difficult than others to get for one reason or the other. And worst case, you repeat the lesson. Again, if anybody is getting frustrated, it's the best time to stop that lesson and try on a different day or at a different time. And the fourth thing you want to consider as a critical factor for success with reading and writing is reading daily. Read seasonal books based on the season where you at every point in time, because it helps them to connect with what is happening around them. They can relate to it and they are more interested. Oh, maybe they see pumpkins outside. If you're reading a book that has pumpkins, they could be attracted because they just saw it outside, right? You're connecting, you're giving them different knowledge, different tips to connect what is happening around them. Choose topics of interest. I have an entire video showing 10 steps or 10 tools to help your child with reading, or to substitute to build their love of reading, right? And you want to pick real life books as much as possible, especially for your 0 to 3 year old, 3 to 6 year olds as well. You can introduce some fiction, but most times real life books tend to attract them a lot. And when they start reading those short words, you want to focus on reading, let's say, matching pictures with words rather than picking an entire big book. In fact, you're better off even writing a book by yourself, like a simple book. I am cat, or I am a cat, right? That the child can just read one sentence and they'll say, "Wow, I've read the whole sentence," right? You just want to begin to pump up that confidence that look, that skill is buildable. It's not as difficult as it looks. It's one word that makes it's many words that make a sentence. It's many sentences that make a book, right? So if you can read a word, you can read a sentence as long as it's all familiar, letter sounds that are in it. And then the last item you want to put in is writing daily. As I've said multiple times, writing helps to commit it to memory. So you want your children to be able to see you writing. You also want them to see you reading, because a lot of times we may not realize that we're not even modeling these skills, we're not modeling these activities, so they don't see why they should learn how to read. If everything is on the system nowadays, then why are they reading? Right? I mean, well, reading a book, reading on the screen, different things. But if you can just type something up, why do you have to write? And before you know it, they're struggling with their handwriting. They're not even familiar with how to hold pens and pencils because they haven't even seen the need to do that. So you want to make sure you're practicing reading, writing, opportunities to show them that you are reading, you are writing, and this is why we even need to learn. So journaling is a very good way to help them practice that skill. And you journaling as well, when they see you, is very helpful for them. So you want to encourage them to start trying to form letters, either using the Play-Doh for a start, playing around with the physical letters if you have magnetic letters, and then trying to write. If they're older, they'll probably have the grip and all that down. they can begin to practice forming those letters. Like, think of a letter, form it. Okay, try and write a word for me. Try and write a sentence for yourself, right? Try and write a letter. So these are all things, right, that would help to get that interest being built and continue to grow. So I think we've covered most basically with the major things we wanted to cover. And I wanted to make sure if there were any questions, you put them in the chat right away. But in the meantime, I'm going to go right to the bonus that I talked about at the beginning. This weekend, we crossed over 100 subscribers, and I'm very excited about that. And I'm really grateful to all you subscribers here and all who are following us and learning one or two things. So, we wanted to share with you about our Montessori home education program that is starting next year. Now, one of the things you will know is that if we're, as much as we have gone through this session and you've learned some tips about reading, writing, you would realize that, okay, this is still not everything. Now, this is just one aspect of the language curriculum. And language curriculum is something we will handle in a couple, one or 2 months altogether in the 12 months of the program. But then we have the mathematics curriculum, we have the culture and science curriculum with botany, zoology, geography, we have the sensorial curriculum, many more subjects, right? And these things are all broken down in a way that is very simple for you. So for today or for the next 24 hours, we're going to be offering a big, huge discount. The program is priced at 160 Canadian dollars, but for the next 24 hours, you're going to be able to get it for 64 Canadian dollars. That is you can't find that price anywhere. So I'll just encourage you. I just want to make sure it's also an opportunity for all who are interested, so that you won't say, oh, the budget was the issue. This is the chance that you have now to grab that very discounted price just for the next 24 hours, to appreciate you all, the subscribers, all who have joined this session. And for the next 24 hours, you can access that from our website. The website link is in the video description. If you have any questions, you can reach me on WhatsApp. Again, my contact details are on the page, very accessible to you. And there's also a wait list to get more details, more information if you need about the program. But our website equally has a lot. So please take advantage of the opportunity. Share this video with your friends. If you learn something, what is that thing you can try with your child today who is learning how to read? And even if your child has already learned how to read, what can you do? You're welcome very much. You're welcome. I hope we all take advantage of that discount, because it's just for a short period. For those that will take advantage of it, it's not going to last for a long time, right? So if you did learn something about how to teach your child to read, share it in the chats. Let us know. If your child already knows how to read, let us know what additional thing you're going to teach them or show them that is going to help their reading. Because sometimes our children learn how to read, but then when they come across new words, they are kind of taken aback, right? They're not sure how to approach it. So, what is it that you have picked from this session? Make sure you share it in our WhatsApp community if you're there. If you're not there, make sure you join in. And if you haven't subscribed at any point for some reason at some point, make sure you do subscribe. And I thank you very much, everyone, for joining this session. And I'll see you all next time. Your questions can still come even in the group, in the comment section. I'll be checking them later on as well. Okay. Take care, everybody. Thank you for joining us live, and have enjoyed the rest of your day.